And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bashing us, him.
July 21st, 2024, your Sunday show, 8 o'clock at night, New York's Finest Unfiltered podcast. NYPD is deploying cops to Washington, D.C. I say it's more virtual signaling. What do you think?
I mean, I don't even know. I don't even know what to call it. I'll be honest with you. So July 24th, flyer comes out, spread the word, wear red, see you there with the Palestinian flag, arrest Netanyahu, surround the Capitol, July 24th at 11 a.m. So this comes out. The NYPD is now seeking volunteers from their uniform ranks in the rank of lieutenant, sergeant, detective, or police officer to go down to Washington, D.C. on the 24th for a uniform detail. I believe it's to man this. Now, we've seen the NYPD be deployed after natural disasters, but we've never seen the NYPD be deployed to be used in a uniform detail out of state, in a different city, under different laws, different rules of engagement. Believe it opens up a liability. Eric, what do you think about that?
Did you hear any of that? So sure enough, September 2005, I deployed to New Orleans in response to Hurricane Katrina. But we were there as a rescue mission. We were there providing aid. We were providing assistance. We were there to help the people. It was exactly that. It was a mission to help, to provide safety, to help the people. But we understood that we had arrest powers. We were there in uniform. We were there on a convoy, so we had our vehicles. We had everything marked as NYPD and NYPD patrol cars in NYPD uniform. We even had our firearms. But it was clear, and we were told that back then, you are not there to take part in any enforcement unless it's absolutely necessary. And we were there we had two shifts. We were working 12 hours. We were doing patrol. We had a day shift that worked 7 in the morning to 7 at night. And I did the overnight, 7 at night to 7 in the morning. And we were helping out. And we did get involved in arrest situations with the New Orleans Police Department and the outside parishes. They call it county parish. But we were there as more of assistance. We were not there in the primary role. In opposition to this, I think this is extremely problematic, and I think this puts the cops in harm's way. It's almost like you ask yourself, would you go out on the weekend knowing that you're going to put yourself in a situation that you may get into a fight or a brawl? You avoid those things. So why would we put the NYPD police officers in a situation where we know we can avoid them get involved in problematic issues? And the issue is not them getting involved in arrest, because the NYPD rank and file can handle themselves. They work in New York City. They work in a metropolis. The problem is that you put them in a situation, are they going to be indemnified if there's lawsuits? So who holds the accountability, responsibility, and ultimately the civil liability? It will be the cop. So any cop that signs up for this, you are out of your mind.
I agree. I mean, I wouldn't put myself in that situation. One, Washington, D.C. is probably more radical than New York City is when it comes to the progressive anti-police, pro-criminal agenda. I mean, again, the rules are different. You don't know what the city's DA will do. Obviously, the DA is consistent with what we've been seeing with Alvin Bragg, and possibly even worse than what we see on Alvin Bragg. You know, we have spoken to a lot of guys in Washington, D.C. over the time. And they really got their back against the wall, and they're having the same issues the NYPD does. So you're going from one progressive city to a worse progressive city, and everything's up in the air, right? I do know they always talk about if a cop gets injured on federal property, you know, the rumor is you'll get 100% disability. I don't know if it's true or if it's not, but the chances of you even being on federal property isn't good, I don't believe. I believe they'll be outside of the Capitol, and you're really opening yourself up. Obviously, these protests have turned violent in New York City. These guys, the NYPD has more familiarity with them, I believe, than the rest of the country. So you see what could happen, but it's totally different when you're on home field and they're your rules and your rules of engagement, the laws you understand, your tactics, your training, as opposed to now I'm taking you out of that and I'm sending you into another team stadium with their rules that you don't know, with their potential laws that you don't know. You don't know their arrest authority. You don't know what's arrestable there and what's not arrestable. So I believe not only does it open up major liability for the city of New York, it opens up major liability, both civil and criminal, for the individual officers. So I agree. I don't know if it's and again, we're not even sure if this is exactly what it is, but I mean, I believe this is what it is.
Listen, I believe that this is virtual signaling. I believe that the NYPD is virtual signaling that they're taking part in these woke progressive politics. The NYPD is no longer apolitical. The NYPD should absolutely not respond to this. Again, I advise any police officer, if you're actually contemplating volunteering for this, you're out of your mind. You have to think the position that you put yourself. You already have extreme amount of civil liability, accountability, responsibility in New York City. Now you're in the capital of the United States. You're there. Yes, you have arrest powers, but there are different laws in different parts of this country and states on how they operate. And you're also working in a different conglomerate. Are you going to get the same support? Absolutely not. You're going to be viewed as an outsider, especially from the citizens of Washington, D.C. You are an outsider, and it may even create more of a target. Look, they sent in other law enforcement agencies throughout the country to stop our protest, and they may even seek more violence. And yes, we know that you're capable to handle yourself physically, but are you prepared to handle yourself financially and the civil liability that may come through this? This also begs a question. I'm curious of what would be the domain and the authority of the Civilian Complaint Review Board to view in and weigh on body camera footage when it comes to an incident that happens outside New York City. So I'm quite interested. I'm interested to know if the Civilian Complaint Review Board would have the authority to make an allegation, to initiate their own allegation. And I would say probably yes, because you're still an NYPD police officer operating under NYPD procedure.
I mean, they have their own civilian complaint review board. So, I mean, I think that you would be subject to those rules. Again, this is all speculation because this is like everything else under the Eric Adams administrations. It's make it up as you go. Don't worry about it. We could do whatever the hell we want. And that's really like, so we don't know. Everything we're talking about speculation. And what's even worse than we don't know is the city of New York doesn't know. It's a complete shit show. It's a complete just, yeah, that sounds good. Let's do it. 100%. I mean, 100%. There's definitely virtue signaling there. There's definitely a lot of ass kissing in there as well, right? They want to kiss up to the new administration, whoever that be, because it's obviously not going to be Joe Biden. That's going to be the president of the United. That's going to be running for president of the United States. So this is kissing up to the new Democratic nominee, whoever that may be, and. I think that it's really people got to start questioning. I mean, this is something we've been talking about for a while now, for almost a year at this point. Is we've been saying how come the funders and the organizers of these events aren't arrested? So I think already, they're talking about this as a national mobilization. If you read this, I believe this came out from within our lifetime. Pro-Palestinian movement. They've been involved in numerous shutdowns of critical infrastructure, such as subways, trains, buses, bridges, tunnels in New York City, as well as New York City streets and New York City sidewalks. Right. So they've been involved in numerous planned, organized, and fund events, and they've acted within impunity in New York City. So we keep saying, why are these organizers and these funders not arrested? Why are they not receiving the RICO status? Why are they not seeking to go after these people? Why are they looking at a small podcast like this and tweets where we're giving our opinion as opposed to looking at these domestic terrorists, right? What these violent domestic terrorists, by the way. And we don't have a clear answer. And again, if the NYPD was to help out and assist in this, I would think you would assist from where you are. You would ensure that the organizers, the funders of these events that are going to mobilize from every part of New York City actually face charges for what they're going to do and what they have done. the violence they have created, the actual the ravaging of New York City taxpayer funds, causing NYPD to be out on New York City streets nightly, massive amounts of overtime, shutdowns for people commuting. I mean, I think you would go after them first to help out your partners in Washington, D.C. But instead, we're just going to send a contingent of people who aren't allowed to do anything to stand there and possibly just be victims like everybody else, but be very civilly and criminal liable victims.
Absolutely. I think that also the burden of the logistics when it comes to moving the police department from New York City to another metropolis to address a situation like this is on the taxpayer for New York City, and it's on the quality of life in New York City. We have an 80 some odd patterns going on in New York City right now. We have a migrant crisis of military age males that are riding around New York City in scooters and committing a vast amount of robberies and other crimes and some heinous rapes. And we're going to deploy police officers that are ultimately extremely needed while we have a diminished police department. We have a loss of manpower in New York City right now, but we're going to relocate police officers to go to an event in Washington, D.C. while we have protests day in and day out since October 8th of 2023 at this point. And we can't even address those protests, but we're going to relocate these police officers and displace them to address an incident or a scenario in Washington, D.C. And again, I think that's a complete insult to the residents of New York City. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's more virtual signaling by the NYPD. It's an opportunity for Mayor Eric Adams to potentially use this as a political run or campaign should he try to move further for a position in Congress or maybe something else within this country, which he's a complete moron. But again, it's just using and utilizing the police department for political means.
100%. He's going to go from being the Biden of Brooklyn to the Kamala of Brooklyn to New York City is like the Washington, D.C. of New York, and like that's what he's going to the guy is completely reckless. He's completely reckless in all of his decisions and all of his appointments. And he's reckless because he really doesn't care about the consequences because in his eyes, the laws do not apply. Right. And that's clear as day. The laws don't apply. So then definitely rules and normalcy doesn't apply, and liability care less about New York City taxpayers and what they're paying, care less about the overall health and well-being in New York City. But you're right, Eric. He hasn't had the ability to stop these nightly protests. So what are we doing in Washington, D.C.? What goal is there to achieve other than you're going to see a couple of young kids who don't know any better standing there in khaki pants, and they're going to be like, oh, yeah, we're the elite in the NYPD. And then when the shit hits the fan, they're not going to look so elite. They're going to look like the female bodyguards that were surrounding Trump during the assassination attempt.
Absolutely. Just listen, just like combat sports, right? We talk about the NYPD. The NYPD is a combat sport itself, right? You always have the advantage when you're on your own home court. You're now a visitor. You're in another location. You're not trained there. You don't know the nomenclature. It's not familiarity. You're policing in a new environment. It's such a hostile environment. We are asking to put the cops into the fire. Now, yes, and it's quite interesting because we remove this whole warrior mindset, right? This whole ideology of being a warrior and being a guardian, but we expect to move our police officers into a volatile situation and not them to be warriors. This is absolutely ridiculous. I think this is a complete joke. Again, I said it's virtual signaling, and we're putting the police officers in a precarious position where the liability is going to be on them and potentially get them into a situation where they may have vast amount of lawsuits. I'm sure the civil liability will be extreme. But it also begs a question. So I think what's idiotic and how the police department just moves so stupidly when it comes to the leadership, especially under the behest of New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Let's think about the logistics, right? Most things are done virtually now. But let's say you are an NYPD police officer and you're at this particular event and you're involved in a volatile situation, which turns to a mass arrest situation. You may be called upon for hearings and eventually a potential trial if it's a serious case. Now, most things are done virtually, but at some point, if it's going to be a trial, you'll probably have to be present. So the logistics of moving police officers and getting discovery material and Giglio material Will you also be open to your Giglio material? Giglio material is information from the defense that could be held against you to show that you're not credible. So now you're going to testify in another court, not understanding that the laws in Washington, D.C. may be different from New York City. So I think we're putting them into a situation where they may incriminate themselves also. And the police department clearly has not thought this out. This is not a calculated decision, of course, because we're acting stupidly and we're under a moronic mayor and a moronic leadership of the police department.
Oh, absolutely. Look at it. Netanyahu is the prime minister of Israel, right? He's the longest serving prime minister of Israel. He had a little break, but since 2022, he's back as the prime minister of Israel. This could cause a national problem, international problem, and this could be an international incident where another country's leader is under threat. His life is basically under threat. His safety is under threat. These are civilians saying they're going to arrest him and they're going to surround the Capitol. I mean, in the basis of this flyer, there's violence being called for. In the base, it would nationally mobilize and surround it until Netanyahu is arrested. Now, I don't know why, and I don't care about the politics of any of this. I'm always America first. That's how I feel about it. And I don't even look to go into the international politics much further than that. I stay home. We have enough of our own problems here to get involved in the world's problems. I don't see it at this point. And I see the same thing for the NYPD. To leave New York City, where you have numerous problems, to pretend you're going to go somewhere else to help someone solve their own problems is a complete laugh. But the potential for violence is surely here, as we've seen on New York City streets every night. And now you're in an arrest situation and you don't understand the laws. You don't understand the laws that the city council of Washington, D.C. has put in place. You don't understand the rules and the regulations that the Washington, D.C. Metro Police have to deal with. You have no idea whatsoever. Now, I'll just put it into context. You're an NYPD cop and you're used to making arrests on Staten Island. That draw-up process with the district attorney is completely different than when you go over to Brooklyn, than when you go over to Manhattan, than when you go over to Queens, than when you go over to the Bronx. The DA's office inside the same city where there's the same laws, the same rules of engagement, they differ so varyingly. It's not even funny. They actually act almost as their own entities. And that's in the city where you know the law and you know what rules you can abide by and how you could interact and what the evidence is that you need to present to a district attorney in order to get this case properly drawn up. You do not know that in Washington, D.C. So when the shit hits the fan and you have to go down, whether it be virtually or physically, and I agree with you, Eric, more than likely it's going to be physically, you're going to have to be down there at some point. More than likely, the arrest that you made is going to be deemed unlawful. Guess what happens when the DA does not draw up an unlawful arrest? You have just made an unlawful arrest, my friend. You will be held civilly liable. And if you think Eric Adams or any of his appointed weaklings are going to say a word about it, you know what they're going to do? They're going to hope that we don't talk about it on this podcast. They're going to virtue signal and they're never going to mention you and they're never going to get you media attention and they're not going to advocate for anyone to support you.
Exactly. What do you think is going to happen to you? Juan Perez, a New York City police officer who's now retired, is facing sentencing in September for an assault case where he was convicted for doing his job, where he was summoned to a 911 call for an emotionally disturbed perpetrator. He took action. He overcame an assault, and he was convicted. What do you think is going to happen when all eyes are on you and you're at the Capitol in the United States wearing an NYPD uniform and you're in a situation that's so volatile and you have to swing your baton? You're on camera for the entire country, for the entire world, because this is international news. This is not just on the national level. Absolutely. These are things to think about. Let's also talk about how much high alert this is going to be. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, is not going to be there gingerly. They just watched Donald Trump being protected by the most ridiculous and fumbling around idiots that are protecting the president. This whole DEI movement, do you think that they feel comfortable with the United States protecting Netanyahu? No, the IDF is going to be there, and they're going to protect Netanyahu, and they're going to be on high alert, and they're going to be extremely combative, especially watching Donald Trump the attempted assassination from someone that was 130 yards because he was not protected, because he was not properly protected, because they were not properly trained, and those people should have never been there as Secret Service agents protecting the president. So this is ridiculous. This is put the cops into the fire. We're asking trouble. And if you sign up for this, you're asking trouble for yourself. So we're giving you the fair warning. You actually have to look at these things that I believe were not evaluated by the leadership of the New York City Police Department. They're not thinking 10 steps ahead. They're not thinking about the long game. Why? Because if they thought about the long game, that would mean that they have compassion for you and think about your career. But they're only thinking about themselves. It's self-serving to their own benefit so that they can virtual signaling for their woke progressive politics and eventually propel in their own careers part of this woke progressive movement. But it's not about you. If it was about you, they would not do this. They would not seek to do this unless they were called upon from President Biden himself and say, hey, you have full immunity and you have full indemnification and you're fully supported, but that's not going to happen. That is a pipe dream.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's rumored that Netanyahu is not even going to show up because it's just going to be too volatile. But the protest is still on. So whether he's there or not, you're going to experience something that may be worse than any of the protests that you've experienced on New York City streets, because this is a national protest. So they're not calling for other agencies to come help them out because they don't think they're going to be outnumbered. They're calling for other agencies to help them out because they believe they're going to be outnumbered. This is another January 6th incident. I mean, I wish anybody that goes there and volunteers, I wish you Godspeed. I wish absolutely nothing happens to you, or this protest just comes over as a peaceful First Amendment activity, and there is no violence, right? That would be the ultimate. I think that would be the ultimate victory there, is that there's just a First Amendment activity that takes place where people exercise their rights, their freedom of speech, their right to protest, and there is no violence. But traditionally, that has not happened with groups that will be attending here. So, I mean, I think, that alone in itself should raise a red flag for you. But at the end of the day, we're talking about civil liability. And now Eric actually brought up another point of criminal liability, right? Because if there is an incident, God forbid someone has a heart attack, God forbid you have to bring someone down to the ground from their head, which can be conceived as a chokehold, which we still hear till this day, that Eric Gardner was choked when in fact he was not. We still hear that. We had an officer fired from that. I think you would be out of your mind and you would be severely misinformed, and you have not been paying attention to the history and the politics that have taken place over the last decade, not only in New York City, but across this country when it comes to policing, when it comes to the pro-criminal attitude of these district attorneys, to think you wouldn't be charged criminally and opened up should, God forbid, something bad happen and someone who attacked you, assaulted you, who put you in a situation where you had to use force is severely injured or dies. I think you'd be sadly mistaken to believe that you wouldn't be held criminally liable and people would have your back.
Absolutely. And let's just talk about the laws, right? They're so different, right? So you're a New York City police officer. You understand the geographical area that you work in, right? And it's so interesting that you just brought that up about the district attorneys. And that's a great point that you bring up. And the nomenclature of the way that politics works in the police department for New York City is completely different from Washington, D.C. And what's interesting about New York City is that counties make up a city. We have 5 counties that make up a city. That's why when you make an arrest in Staten Island, the district attorney there would operate different from the district attorney, let's say Queens, because they're different counties. So the county has the right to determine how that they're going to do their process for an arrest situation, of how they're going to do their paperwork, because it's their own county. So what's interesting, if you're working in Washington, D.C., you don't know the laws of Washington, D.C. You barely know the laws for all the 5 boroughs. It's very confusing, convoluted. If you work in Staten Island, then you have to go to Queens and make an arrest because of the county's laws and the way that they operate. But now it's even more convoluted because you're not familiar with Washington, D.C., unless you just happen to be a native of D.C. and you volunteer for this. But I never met any natives of Washington, D.C. when I was a New York City police officer. But I can tell you this, it's quite interesting. So if you're in Washington, D.C. is its own state. But easily you could be in parts of Washington, D.C. where you're actually in Maryland. Or you can be in parts of Washington, D.C. where you're actually in Virginia. So Washington D.C. a very interesting place when it comes to politics and the law. So easily you and I could be working together, John, and I get deployed at some location. I'm actually in Virginia, in Washington D.C., and you are in Maryland, and those laws are completely different. And the police department is not going to have enough time, nor are they going to delve into this and get them the proper training to understand where their incorporated cities are and to understand the laws of where you're working when it comes to Washington, D.C.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't care if you're the most fit police officer that's ever been. If you're a third-degree black belt in every martial art that you could think about, if you're on top of that a trained boxer, a gymnast, a taekwondo expert, a Muay Thai expert, if I put you in a situation and I put you in uniform and you don't understand the laws, you're completely useless. I could take a guy with little skinny frail arms who's never worked out a day in his life and he understands the law and I throw him in uniform, he is going to be more effective as a police officer that day than you could ever be. He might get you to assist him to get people into handcuff and things of that nature, but he is a functioning police officer. You yourself are not. So if you're walking around on New York City streets right now and you wear an NYPD uniform and you're not familiar with the patrol guide, and you're not familiar with the New York State penal law, and you don't know how to apply that when it comes to actuality instead of just reading it, you're useless. You're sitting duck. You don't know what it is to actually be a police officer. So that little nerdy guy that's reading the patrol guide, he's reading the VTL, the vehicular traffic laws, and he knows all of the stuff that goes on in New York City. He is way more effective than you could ever be. Now, put yourself in Washington, D.C., and sit there and tell me that you feel comfortable and you understand when you have arrest authority, what the laws are, and things of that nature. Because I'm going to say right now that the scenario I just gave applies to about 80% of the cops that are on New York City streets right now. They don't understand the New York State penal law. They've never read the NYPD patrol guide. They don't know the vehicle and traffic law. They know a few laws they know certain crimes that pop up frequently in their precincts or things that they interact with frequently, but they don't understand it overall. That's a big problem in policing nationally, not just in New York City. But to take yourself out and now put yourself as a day one rookie, not understanding anything, you're out of your mind.
And let's talk further about logistics when it comes to the movement from New York City to Washington, D.C. Things that we haven't even discussed, little things like, right, for instance, when I deployed to New Orleans with the New York City Police Department response to Hurricane Katrina, at the time, it was pretty much desolate. Everyone was pretty much evacuated. We were still doing cleanup at this time. The smell was just horrendous. But we took over a nursing home that was not utilized, that was evacuated, and we turned that into a precinct, and that's where we were housed. We slept there. Where are the police officers going to stay? Are they going to stay at a migrant shelter? Where are the police officers going to stay? Are they going to be housed in a hotel? Are they going to stay outside in a camp? Where are the police? I mean, this is summertime, but where are the police officers going to stay? Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to feed them? Who's going to provide shelter? Who's going to move them around? Are they going there in NYPD patrol cars? I mean, NYPD patrol cars are being attacked in New York City. What do you think is going to happen to an NYPD patrol car marked in Washington, D.C. at the center of the highlight of politics with this particular protest? And you know what's interesting about this also? I highly doubt right now with New York City police officers being overworked, they're exhausted, that they're volunteering to work protest in New York City, and they're going to volunteer to work a protest in Washington, D.C. Listen, if you want to see Washington, D.C. that bad, it's a 4 to 5 hour drive from New York City. It's not far. Go see the memorials, but go see them at a different time. You don't need to be present at this event.
I don't even know, and I don't even speak to any of these kids. I don't really know any of them. Know some of their parents, but I guarantee they're being voluntold. I guarantee the citywide response team, the khaki pants kids, are being voluntold. If anyone doesn't know what voluntold is, it goes a little something like this. Kid, you got good detail. You got it real good here. We want you to go to Washington, D.C. It will look real good for the mayor and the department for you to go to Washington, D.C. We're not going to be too happy. You know, we're not going to help you further your career. You want to make sergeant. You want to stay in this unit. We want people that want to do police work and secure the security of this nation, you know? So if maybe you don't want to be on the team. you want to be on the team, you're going to volunteer. And I'm going to say exactly that's what happened. I'm not there. Very familiar with the New York City Police Department. I've ran into all of these guys that watch The Godfather and Goodfellas too much, and they mistake being a police officer for being a gangster, and they're going to push you to do. They're going to attempt to push you to do things that you don't want to do, nor do you have to do. So I think that's where integrity, strength, and knowledge comes in. Right, knowledge overall, because you know, and that's what I believe's happening. I believe that I'm positive there's a few maniacs that are signing up to go, that want to go because they just want to be involved and they want to see it. And I get that. You know, you're young, you're young, or you just want to be there and you want to experience different things in your life. And you know, when you're going to get this opportunity again to go wear an NYPD uniform in Washington D.C. and be a cop there. But those people are few and far between. Believe everybody else is being voluntold.
Oh, absolutely. Same way they were voluntold to climb up that Bearcat when they went to the Columbia University. It's not good to do things that were not trained. It looks great, the great photo ops. I'm sure Kaz Daughtry and Tariq Shepard, Deputy Commissioner Operations, Deputy Commissioner of Public Information, are already preparing for their stage photo event in Washington, D.C. if they do attend. I'm sure they're preparing for it already. I'm thinking right now where their photo is going to be, what's going to be in the background. I'm sure some memorial, maybe be a picture of Tariq Shepard, dressed up in camouflage and in some type of military uniform, so he could virtual signal in Washington D.C. Speaking of Tariq Shepard, let's talk about Tariq Shepard and his challenge coin, because I'm thinking of his stage photo op. It makes me think of the challenge coin right now. If anybody's had an opportunity to see it, John, let's get right into it. I think it's hysterical. I actually might buy one. I'm not a big challenge coin person, but Tariq Shepard, if you have a challenge coin, I'm in.
So I think the best challenge coin. So we posted about it on our social media links at the Finest Unfiltered, for both Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and as well as we have a Twitter handle. It's at the Finest Cast. We couldn't get at the Finest Unfiltered. Elon Musk fixed that, so we could get that, please. It's not because anyone else is taking it. It's because it's too long and it won't fit in the ad. So please fix that so we could have that. But so if you go there, we actually posted the challenge coin. So the challenge coin is a black man with a nice fade, nice tape up, full line head of hair, and it's on the back of it is that says the Deputy Commissioner of Public Information. So it's Tariq Shepard's challenge coin. But when you flip it, it's a man with a Superman haircut. Tariq Shepard goes to the same barber as me. It's a Mach 3, shaves his head. So he does not have the tape up like that you see on the individual, almost with a Superman haircut. So it looks like a black Superman with the hair and muscles, something that I don't see from Tariq Shepard. He looks a little like hunched over. Looks like he's too tall and he's starting to hunch over a little bit. So you don't see that from him. So, and he's actually, the man's ripping off his shirt, standing at an NYPD podium, ripping his suit back, and you see DCPI there. I'm shocked that you didn't see him in the ASU helmet or in the official NYPD European hiking helmet, which he's wore on a few different occasions. But I think it's completely laughable. I think it shows exactly how egotistical and how narcissistic these people are.
You know, what it shows me also, I used to say in the police department, when you get promoted, you get better looking. But what's interesting about this also is when you get promoted, you also become a warrior. You become a warrior just like Tariq Shepard, because prior to being the Deputy Commissioner of Public Information, I didn't see him as a warrior. I don't even think he was involved in any arrest situations. He was pretty much like the anti-cop cop. But now, as he's getting promoted, he's becoming a warrior. He even had an ESU uniform during a press conference. That should have been what was on the challenge coin. So Tariq Shepard, my advice is if you're going to do another challenge coin, you should do it with that whole ESU getup that you had during the press conference. I think that's a good look for you. I'll buy that challenge coin also. And Kaz Daughtry, if you have a coin coming out with you with a picture of your Captain America chair, maybe holding a PS5, I'll buy that one too.
So there it is. NYPD podium, male black with hair, ripping his shirt, his white shirt off, his red tie flailing in the wind wearing a bulletproof vest that says DCPI on it, a helicopter in the background with flying the banner for Crime Stoppers. That is some funny stuff, man. That is real funny stuff. I don't know where it's for sale. I definitely want one. I also want a Strength and Honor coin that was made by the illustrious John Shell. And I would also like to buy a Kaz Daughtry coin with his taxpayer-funded Dodge Durango on there. And I believe there was a drone flying in the background. I'm not 100% sure. But I want all three of those to complete my collection, as well as an Ed Caban one. And I'm sure Kinsella has one too, but I've never seen it.
I think this is hysterical. Listen, you know what? It just, at some point, we're going to have a New York's Finest Unfiltered podcast challenge coin. But it's going to be a lot better than this one. But this is pretty funny. I definitely have to get one. I just think it's hysterical. It's laughable. Here we have Tariq Shepard. Barely did any police work his entire career. Let's be honest. Come on. He was working for the Deputy Commissioner of Public Information Office. The majority of his career was the CO of the 2A precinct, not very long, and now he's got a challenge coin. It's laughable. The police department has just become a huge joke at this point. That's why, listen, for the cops that are out there, if you're really interested in going to Washington, D.C. and doing other things with the police department, I know it's sexy. It sounds great to go other places, but you really have to think about what position you're putting yourself in. If you're a single guy and you really have nothing to lose and you don't own anything and you're willing to take the risk, I get it. But if you're married, you have a family, you have a lot of liability, you have a house, you have cars, you have assets and liabilities. This is something to really think about. Are you protected in New York City? Are you going to be protected in Washington, D.C.? It's just not worth it at this point. If you want to see Washington, D.C., as I said, take your family at another time. It's a short drive, and you can see the beautiful memorials. But this is definitely not the time. And this is definitely all eyes are going to be on this event. This is at the international level, not just at the level of the United States. The whole world is watching, especially when it comes to Netanyahu.
Eric, let's talk about this a little bit. Again, me and Eric did an episode on this a while back, and we were asking if Kaz Daughtry's a civilian or if he is a uniformed member of service. For those of you that don't know, just to clear this up, he is an appointed deputy commissioner in the NYPD. He has the assimilated rank of a 3-star chief. Okay. Traditionally, you would never see a deputy commissioner or a 3-star chief at a search warrant. You would never see a politician or the media at a search warrant. They would show up after the fact, after all the evidence has been found, collected, and gathered. Normally, you would see them have a press conference with the evidence placed out on the table after it was already accounted for, and the recovering officer was identified, etc. Here, I think you're seeing just another example of how everything is just on the go. Everything's on the fly. Nothing is based upon tradition. So this is New York City Police Department with New York City Mayor, with Viral News New York, with the Deputy Commissioner of Operations. More than likely, the Deputy Commissioner of Public Information was there as well. And they're at an active crime scene and an active search warrant where illegal marijuana is being stored. Right there, you're seeing a shotgun being stored. I don't know if it's illegal or not, and I actually don't even know if the drugs are illegal because marijuana is legal in New York City. So I don't know exactly the details of this search warrant. But Eric, what do you think about the mayor being there, the media being there, the assistant commissioner of the deputy commissioner of operations being there? And actually, it appears from what I'm watching, they're tainting evidence. They're looking at the evidence, they're touching evidence, and they're in an active crime scene. What do you think about that?
This is let me tell you something. This is some stage photo op. I'm going to assume or hope that this whole thing was actually done already, and that this is just a stage photo op afterwards. Because if it's not, this is completely stupid. Just think about it. I mean, if everything was already recorded, and this is done, and they said, "Hey, we're going to do a stage photo op," I think that's stupid. But it wouldn't surprise me. But it would actually be a better move, logistically, when it comes to trials and hearings, when it comes to this case, because we have care, custody, and control. but they're absolutely tainting this. If this is in real time, they're tainting the entire scene. I worked numerous search warrants, and you did yourself. I was an anti-crime sergeant, special operations lieutenant, and constantly we did search warrants. Especially I worked in the Lower East Side because there was so much narcotics there. We were doing 2, 3, sometimes 4 and 5 a month, these search warrants. And it's so important. Everything has to be properly documented. Who's present at the scene? Who was present in a particular room? Who searched the location? Who recovered the evidence? And there are too many hands in the cookie jar. I just put a tweet out in response. As I said, there's way too many hands in the cookie jar. And also, especially now with bail reform, with the discovery laws, the defense attorney in any hearing or trial is permitted to bring up what's called giglio material. And it's anything to show that someone would not be credible. And I see people on the scene that would not be credible in this particular case and completely would taint in the scene. The mayor should absolutely not be present at this. We've never seen that before, especially even with Mayor Bill de Blasio. He wasn't present at these locations. They should be present afterwards. But again, they're touching everything. It doesn't matter that they have gloves on. They should not touch it. Everything is so important. They could completely taint this case, and this case could be dismissed. All the hard work, but exemplary work by the rank and file could be completely diminished by the fact that they want to do a stage photo op and have their egos propel and virtual signal to the public. Hey, look at me. Look what I'm doing. This is absolutely ridiculous. There's no discipline, no leadership. They should not be touching it. Every time you touch something, you could be defined as a recorder and you could be liable to testify in court. Look at the mayor right here. Is he liable? Are you prepared to testify? He should not be touching this stuff, because now the question is, okay, at what point did you touch it in this case? Are we losing the chain of custody when it comes to this evidence? Are we preserving evidence? It also leaves room. Was any evidence disturbed, compromised? This is absolutely acting stupidly, again, by the New York City Police Department leadership and also under the behest of New York City Mayor Eric Adams.
Yeah, and I don't see the mayor or Kaz wearing gloves at all. And they're touching things that does not appear to be recovered. So again, they tainted the evidence. I think this is complete nonsense. When I look at this, what do you see? You see this video, you just see cameras flashing and flashing and flashing and camera clicks going off. So what's more important? What's more important? The integrity of the crime scene, the integrity of the search warrant, or the photo op? To me, I'm going to say right now, I'm looking at this, obviously the photo op. You have civilian media inside of an active crime scene where evidence has not been processed. Now, I'm not claiming that any of the media has any nefarious intentions or would do that, but if it's there, the opportunity has presented itself. The opportunity is ripe for them to maybe take something, put it in their pocket, maybe move some evidence. Maybe they know the guy that owns this thing, tip somebody off, hear a conversation that they shouldn't have. And traditionally, what do we know? We've done search warrants before. Yeah, kid, don't put me down on the scene. Right? Boss doesn't want to get involved. Wants to play cop now that they have zero responsibility. They don't have to testify. They don't have to worry about the liability of it. They want to come there. They want to touch everything. They want to play detective when they never made arrests as a cop. Now, Kaz has made arrests as a cop. I mean, I know most of them were driven back to the command for him, and then he took them from there and he processed them. But at least he has arrest to his name, unlike New York City Mayor Eric Adams, who clearly has been playing cop for the last 2.5 years, but he never played cop for his 21-year career. He never played cop when he was in uniform. While he was a cop, he played politician. Now that he's a politician, he's playing cop. He has no business in it. This is a completely staged photo op, and like I said earlier, it's virtue signaling, and it's just more of
it. I also think that this is completely irresponsible for the mayor and for Kaz Daughtry to actually enter the scene. And again, it also undermines the authority and the leadership that's actually present at the scene that's handling this particular case. Do they know all the details of this case? Is there anything here that could be flammable? Is there any drugs or narcotics at this location that actually be flammable or have chemicals that could dissipate, that could cause any damage to anyone here? Is there any ammunition that could cause any damage here? These are things that are not discussed. I think it's just completely irresponsible. And also, it really does undermine the leadership that's present at the scene that's controlling, because now the cops are not sure who's in charge here. At this point, what do we do? again, it just completely convolutes the situation. It's so irresponsible. And I think you're 100% right. I think that the priority at this scene, and you see the flashing constantly, is the stage photo op. It's not the scene itself. It's not about public safety. It's not about preserving evidence. It's not about getting a job done. It's not about we get stuff done to propel the cops. It's just about themselves and their own egos. It's another photo op. I think it's absolutely ridiculous, and I feel sorry for the New York City public because it's an amazing job. Look at the amount of evidence that was preserved here, that was confiscated. The police are doing their job as they're paid and trained to do, but they're being overrun by just complete morons and idiots. This is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, here's another video of viral news, and you see the evidence is all over the place. There's tons of it. It couldn't have properly been intake and vouchered at this point, and recovered. It couldn't have been properly documented and cataloged and photoed. And the recovering officer there, right? It was the quick get this on the table and let's get this out and smack it, put all those things up, right? Because I'm busy and I got to get out of here and I got to get this photo up. And I'm standing here with Anthony Miranda, who's the New York City sheriff, whom I appointed, who the New York City Sheriff's Unit is calling for to step down, where they say that this evidence that's been being seized is not being stored properly, right? They don't have the proper storage locations. It's ripe for corruption. It's ripe for loss. It's ripe for danger presented to the public, to the sheriffs themselves. So the sheriff's unit is calling for him to step down. We'll probably have them on here at some point to go into that further. But Anthony Miranda, let's give him a shout out again for promoting the invisible mask during COVID, which would get you to float the COVID rules that he enforced while he was shutting down New York City businesses. So big shout out to you, Anthony Miranda. Also, big shout out to your officers who were uncharged for stealing evidence in the past, who they stole alcohol from raids, from illegal alcohol places, and they took the alcohol and they made what the newspapers called a man cave, and they stored all the alcohol in there for their own personal use. So is that what's going to happen with this evidence as well, Anthony? We don't know. We're going to see, but clearly you see photo op, photo op, photo op. I mean, if I was them, I'd be hiding my face in shame for what New York City looks like.
John, I think this really disturbs the case, and I think that this is just more ammunition for any defense attorney, because when it comes to a search warrant, especially now, you're supposed to don your body camera. The body camera is supposed to view the entire search warrant itself. So, of course, Anthony Miranda doesn't have a body camera. New York City Mayor Kaz Daughtry, they're not donning body cameras. So that is an issue. If at any point they enter a room of evidence and they're not present with someone with a body camera, that could also be an issue. Another thing is, listen, I know this is completely separate. I just wanted to pay attention. I noticed that Kaz Daughtry's not wearing a white shirt. Now he's wearing a blue shirt. I thought that he wears white shirts. It's funny that he changes his uniform quite often. But, it's just, again, this is just completely stupid that a stage photo op just overshadows everything. How is someone actually documenting this properly? Is there a police officer that walking up and saying, hey, the mayor at such and such time was holding evidence bag number so-and-so? This stuff has not even been documented yet. They're still taking this stuff into transport, moving it from one location to another. This is a complete logistical nightmare. We talk about a logistical nightmare when it comes to mass arrest. This is a logistical nightmare when it comes to custody chain, the chain of custody and control of evidence, particularly an active search warrant as we speak. And I just think this is completely irresponsible. And it just shows how, when you have the wrong leadership, how an entire organization could be affected by it. And the hard work that the men and women are doing here could easily just be thrown down the drain.
Absolutely. I wouldn't want to take this arrest. I wouldn't want to go down to the district attorney's office. Who recovered that? Where'd you find that? Who was it? Who was the recovering officer? Who was on scene? I'm telling you right now, whoever took this arrest, you have better put them all on scene. You have better said who recovered what. Don't put yourself open to make yourself liable for them. But I wouldn't want this because it's a convoluted mess. Like you said, there's a million hands in the cookie jar, and you truly aren't going to know who recovered what at what point. Look at the amount of evidence, like you said. And like you said, this isn't properly cataloged and documented. That's clear as day. I mean, this should have all been vouchered, then been brought to a press conference for them to do their photo op. I get they're going to do the photo op. I'm not even knocking them for doing that. It's one of the largest sieges we have, but do it properly. Don't rush to do it. Don't put the photo ops in front of keeping a solid case and exposing your officers to more liability, and the people in the city of New York for more liability, and letting the person that you just arrested and you did this great work walk because you're more concerned with the photo op than you are about preserving life, safety, and the evidence.
You know, I used to run the metal board at PSA 7, Police Service Area 7 in the South Bronx. So for the NYPD personnel, that they understand what this is, but for our fans that watch this, our supporters throughout the country and even throughout the world, in every precinct, we have what's called a medal board. So if you're involved in a situation and you think that it deserves a medal according to the criteria that we have, you would write up basically your own commendation of why you think you deserve a particular medal. And I would oversee that board, and we would have people judge and decide if someone should get that medal or not. But it reminds me, there were a few cops, and there's one cop in particular. He knows what I'm talking about. Great guy, but it was always hysterical. This one particular cop, he could be involved in a situation. He could be running after someone with a gun. And while he's running after that person, he's already thinking about, what medal do you think this is? I mean, before the job is even done, he's already thinking about what medal it would be. I mean, and this is what's going on here. This scene has not even been preserved yet. It's not even completed, and they're already thinking about how much notoriety they're going to get for this particular scene. And the case is still wet. It's not even dry yet. It's absolutely ridiculous. Let the search warrant play out. Everything's documented. Then, of course, take your photos. But this is just completely compromising the integrity of the scene. It's irresponsible. They're acting stupidly, and it just shows, unfortunately, this is what happens when you have inadequacy. And I'm curious to see. I would love to follow up and find out what happens with this case, because this is a completely disturbed scene. And now you have to keep record of all these people. And if you're the cop on the scene, I know it's tough, but you would have to have the guts to say, excuse me, Mayor, if you're going to touch this, I have to document that you touched it. You have to document, even if a piece of evidence was already recovered, every person that handles it, and that's the chain of custody, you have to document who held it, at what time, what pocket did they put it in. These are things that could easily disturb a scene, and everything has to be documented properly and thoroughly.
And any defense attorney is also going to subpoena every reporter that's on scene as well. And that's the other thing you're going to have to know. What members of the media were there? What did they hear? What did they see? It's all part of evidence now. Dumb. Let's talk about yesterday, right? Yesterday, Mighty Fuzz Young invited me to go play basketball. He's in Queens. I was in Staten Island. I was like, where do you want to meet up? He's like, let's meet up in Brooklyn. I said, okay, where do you want to go? He's like, let's go to the place on Shore Road. I like that park. I said, okay, I've been there before. I used to play football there with the Brooklyn kids. We used to play tackle on the field overlooking the water when I was a kid. I was like, yeah, let's do it. So we go over there. As I walk in, I see my favorite politicians in Brooklyn South, where I grew up. Andrew Gundaris, the state senator, and Justin Brannan are having an event at the park. And I'm like, what the hell are the chances that these people are going to be here the same day that I'm coming here to play basketball at the same time? So I go over to where their booths are. They're not there. So I was whatever. I go to continue to play basketball. I play with a couple of great guys over there. If you guys are listening, a shout out to you. I'll be back when another Saturday morning. We'll play again. And afterwards we left, and I run into Justin Brannan. So I take this photo with Justin. When I seen Justin, I said, hey, Justin, it's your favorite X handle, right? He comes over. He has a big smile. He's laughing. And we spoke. I spoke to him. I asked him about Resolution 5 in City Council to reinstate all of the fired New York City workers. I said, listen, I know we disagree on a lot of topics. I said, I know I come at you online a lot. Most of what I do is joking, but there is a serious entity to it. I harbor no hard feelings personally, nor do I hate anyone. And I've offered him to come on the podcast. I've offered him to have coffee with me, the same as we have to New York City mayor and a lot of other people that we are in opposition to. Because what we believe is that you need to advocate to your local politicians in order to affect change. So in my eyes, I advocated to Justin Brannan right there. He said he would look at the bill. He said he wasn't aware of it, which I let some people know who are pushing this bill through that he said he wasn't aware of it. So since that time, he has been made aware of it numerous times and been emailed the bill numerous times so that he could get his eyes on it to look at it. Eric, what do you think about the photo? What do you think about me taking a photo with him, smiling, having a good time with someone that I'm in clear political opposition to, who I've made fun of numerous times on social media and I've advocated against numerous times?
I think you got a new best friend. But I tell you what, honestly, shout out to Justin Brannon. Now, listen, I don't agree with his politics. I'm completely in opposition to defund the police. However, it's exactly what I've been saying. Communication breaks barriers and opposition meets opportunity. And I think that it's important that we actually have these tough conversations and we actually debate with each other in a stoic and professional way. We tell each other what we disagree and agree on. But the fact that you can have a picture here smiling, I mean, John, you've put some stuff on about Justin Brannon being a Barbie doll on Twitter, and you've had debates about issues. And you know what? I think that the police department needs to learn from Justin Brannon because you know what? He earned my respect. This is exactly how I expect people to handle it. And yourself, you know, I'm proud of you also. You represent this podcast well. This is exactly how we should conduct ourselves. We should be able to debate, not agree. You know what? Be critical of one another, give our opinion, but in the reality, still remain civil. And here, you can just see legitimately that you both laughing here because that's what it's about. You know what? At the end of the day, you're still people. We have to care for each other. Hate is a strong word, and I don't hate anyone. Okay, and neither should you. We should treat each other with respect. But Justin Brown, I have to say, if you watch this podcast, you earn my respect. And the police department, upper echelon, they should learn from you because this is exactly how you should handle jokes and keep them in jest. And you handled it well. And the fact that you were able to have a conversation in public, especially when things are so critical on social media, says a lot about you. He showed character. We don't have to agree on everything, but this is exactly the way it should be. And this, again, just puts it right in Mayor Eric Adams' face. Just shows how stupid he is that he said that things on social media lead to political violence. No, you can and that people say things on social media that they wouldn't do in person. And John, you showed here that you're willing to be critical of him on social media and also have a stoic and professional conversation in person. And still you told him about the bill and you had a professional conversation. And if anyone's thinking that going further, that John would not be critical now of Justin Brannon because they embraced each other and shook hands, absolutely not. I know John will continue to be critical if the occasion arises, at the same time, still remaining stoic and professional.
100%. What I said to him is, I said, see, I don't hate any of you guys. I don't. I said, you could come over to my house for coffee and we could talk about these issues. But I am in complete opposition of the rhetoric in 2020. Especially, it was a very hard time for police officers and our families where we were completely demonized. And you guys, and he was with other people. And I said, you guys were pushing a narrative that the NYPD is a white supremacist organization. I said, I'm the closest thing to a white supremacist you're going to find. I'm a poor Italian kid from Bensonhurst. I said, so the narrative bothered me. So I pushed back on that. I said, as well as, I know we disagreed about the mandate. I said, but it's over now. You have guys and girls that are homeless, that have lost everything. Why can't we get these people back to work? You have shortages. He said, okay, let me look at it. We left off there. And I got news for everybody. Like, oh, he gave you lip service. You shouldn't allow that. You should have yelled at him. You should have did that. I don't protest. This is what I do. I debate people. I'll come at you online and I'll come at you in person. But this is how I come at you. We talk about it, right? If he could have blew me off, he could have said, I'm not talking to you, blah, 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 F you, this, that. But he didn't do it either. So I respect him as that. And we've seen that throughout the time, right? He never blocked me on social media. He responds to things that I say on social media. I don't believe he gives me full responses and I'm not happy with it. But even if he votes on Reso 5, I'll be happy. I'll give him his kudos. I'll give him a shout out. But the next piece of legislation that comes down the road that I don't like, I'm going to continue to call him out. Because that's what we should be doing as Americans, right? And you're right, 100%. Eric Adams is trying to make the nexus that you criticizing your local politicians online leads to political violence. That couldn't be further from the truth. I do believe he was talking about myself, you, Eric, Sal Greco, a lot of other names out there. Because I do believe that we are being investigated right now as domestic terrorists, which is laughable. It's completely laughable. So it was like a godsend that I just happened to be there the day that he's having a party there, and I'm playing basketball, and we get to run into each other. We had a good conversation. We laughed, and that was it. And he walked on. He was a gentleman about it. I was a gentleman about it. And that's how we should be, right? When it comes to business, when it comes to politics, when it comes to issues we have in life, we're human. Listen, I don't hate Justin Brennan. I don't hate Eric Adams. I don't hate Kaz Daughtry. I actually pray for these people. I would sit down and at a moment's notice right now and have coffee with any single one of them, and I'll tell them exactly how I feel. I'll tell them all the things I posted online and why I posted, because that's what I am. I'm a real person. So anyone that thinks I should have cursed at them or anything, I got news for you. Most of you are hiding behind a fake handle. Most of you won't do what I did. If you've seen them, you look the other way or run. Or if you sit there and curse them, you make them right. You make them right that you're an animal and you're a savage and they're above you and they're smarter than you and they shouldn't take anything you have to say into account. But that's not me, and I'm not going to do that. And I know that's not you, Eric. And that's why I believe this podcast has been very effective at showing that police officers are not the brutes and savages, dumb idiots that we're made out to be. That civil servants aren't the idiots that we're made out to be. That we're people just like everybody else.
Yeah, I think that would be completely the wrong approach. I don't agree with that. I don't think that yelling and screaming does anything. I think that this is the right way to have critical opinions, to have debates, to discuss things, to agree, disagree, go back at each other, because this is about professionalism. This is about serving the public. This is about our needs. And again, and I mean it, Justin Brown, here on my respect. I don't agree with the stuff he says. And even if at this point, even if John, let's just say he hates the stuff that you say and it really does bother him, he didn't show it here. He acted exactly how he's supposed. He didn't show it. He's smiling, and you know what? He let it roll off his shoulders, and that's what the NYPD upper echelon should do. When you see memes from the New York's Finest Unfiltered podcast, you should be laughing about it. You should let it roll off your shoulders. You shouldn't let that ego overshadow your work and actually let it get to you. You should be laughing about it. If people aren't talking about you, you're not important. But this is how people should handle things civilly. Laugh with each other, joke about it, laugh at the fact that you don't agree about it. This is great. And, like I said, shout out to Justin Brannon. And I think that this is the way people should move forward. We talk about community relations. That's community relations right here. Communication breaks barriers. And on another note, I just want to say how great podcasting is, this network that we're building. Just as you mentioned, Mighty Fuzz, he's become a great friend of myself and John McCarry with this podcast. What a great guy. I mean, just, really represents We the People, part of the du jour movement. And look, you're playing basketball together. It's just great, this network of the people that we meet. If it wasn't for this podcast and in retirement, who knows if we would have crossed paths. So shout out to Mighty Fuzz Young. And when I see you, brother, I'm playing ball with you also, and I heard about your shoes, that you brought your biking shoes to play ball. So get ready. You're going to need some LeBrons. I might have to buy you a pair. But shout out to my brother, man. He's become a great friend, great guy. Check him out, Mighty Fuzz Young Podcast. That's him right there. Listen, what a great guy. I said this before. When John went on his podcast, and he did it virtual. You went on his podcast, and you met him in person. And I never even met him yet. And I said, you know what, John? I like that guy. I don't know why, but I like that guy. It was always so. Please check him out. Great guy, man. I don't know if you can see his shoes here, but I don't think he was ready to play ball. But hey, listen, that's the way it should be. We're coming together. We're opposition and people minded alike. We come together. See those. That's the way it should be, man. I like it.
Yeah, we had a great time. We played ball with a bunch of guys that gather at that park on Saturday. One of them was a retired sergeant named Paul. I think he retired. He's about 62 years old. He's still playing basketball. He has a killer jump shot. These are people I look up to. These are people that I want. He said he retired about 20 years ago. We spoke a little bit about retiring young as opposed to staying late. And he said, I can't believe we talked about all the people we know that had stayed, aged out. And, that we had in common, because he worked in the 7-2. He's a Brooklyn South sergeant. I forget where he was before that. And, we talked all things about that. So I thought it was a great experience. And then, as Fuzz, we always talk about politics. So we were talking politics basically the whole time. And it was fun, and again, he's trying to make the du jour movement go mainstream. There are things that we disagree about, even though I think we're both on the same path and the same type of mission that myself and Eric talk about. There are nuances that we disagree about. And, we consistently talk about them when we go back and forth with them a lot. And I think that's the way forward, man. So, yeah, Mighty Fuzz, shout out to him. Check out his podcast. He's a big constitutionalist. He's a big pres- uh, preserve the republic and actually restore the republic is the words that he uses. And he believes in limited government and bringing the country back to its founding, where he believes we have moved away from. And I don't disagree with him on that fact. So I think it's a vital conversation that needs to be had. And so it's podcasting is fun. Building a network, meeting people, being out on social media is great. I honestly think I have now officially retired NYPD lieutenant. My 20 years has passed. So my benefits kick back in. And I honestly think for everything I lost, I gained so much more from doing this. So, a lot of relationships that I wouldn't have had, connections I wouldn't have had, and the ability to project my voice. So, shout out to Greg for always being there and looking out, even when he doesn't agree with us.
I'm telling you, man, just he's an awesome human being. He's a great guy, man. I really do consider him a great friend. I look forward to when we actually meet in person. Again, I thought I was always a good identifying good people and seeing behavioral indicators. Great guy. I love the movement that he's doing. Again, do we agree on everything? Absolutely not. But we agree on a lot of things, and we have great conversations, and that's what's really important. It's just like I said, it's just amazing by this podcast that the path that we've taken in retirement, the people that we've met, the network that we've built. Would we have had that before? Not necessarily. And that's why sometimes it's so important to see the value on negative things that happen and turn to something positive in your life. And it's been nothing but a virtue, and it's been outstanding retirement and the people that we met and the connections that we built. And I really think this is community relations, what we're doing right now. And I hope the police department can see that. It's communication. It's real conversations, not just conversations of what's on the surface, but real conversations, really getting down deep and talking about your opinions on things and where that derived from. And it's okay to disagree. Don't be afraid to disagree with someone. They'll respect you more for it.
100%. 100%. I mean, we're going to have an NYPD executive come on soon, and he's going to give an executive standpoint. We'll announce him when that time comes and when it's ready. A retired NYPD executive, a recently retired. So he'll give his standpoint on policing. We'll go over his career, obviously. But I think more importantly than anything we do, even if we knock Shell or we knock Kaz or we knock any of these people, it's an open platform. They're welcome on here. They're welcome to come on here and speak, and we'll give them the floor, and we won't speak over them, and we won't raise our voices. It's an open platform. I think Eric said it a while ago. He said, cops are treated as children. You should be seen and not heard. And I think we've done a great job at exposing the fact that that's completely wrong, and we should be heard. We shouldn't not just be seen. We should also be heard. There should be a voice there. Our perspective really matters. We do have, I believe, a different worldview from the majority of the public. I think often when I speak to people, when I speak to my friends, when I speak to anybody that's just curious about what we're doing or myself, they often say to me, "I don't agree with everything you say." I'm like, okay. I was like, I don't agree with everything I say most of the time either. I'm like, I don't expect anyone to agree with me most of the time. I don't expect the cops to think that everything that I say or Eric say is correct. It's just our opinion. And what we're doing is creating an open forum, public debate, civil open debate. So it's laughable when I go on my LinkedIn and I see the director of Homeland Security looking at my stuff. When I see all the people from the NYPD that are looking in the domestic terrorism unit, looking at my LinkedIn and things of that nature. It's completely laughable to me that exercising my First Amendment rights and giving my opinion is somehow deemed as a danger. I don't think anything that I've ever done should say that in my life, in my career, and in my retirement has ever done. I think me and Eric are the basis of what you would expect a police officer to be, a retired officer, a member of the community. I think that we're overall good Americans. I think that we're people that you would want your children to be like. So, I think that's very laughable. So I think that's what we've done. I think what's been created here, again, we've had Cop Watch on here. We didn't attack him. We let him say what he wants. He's welcome to come back on. I'd actually love to have him on. We've had Edwin Raymond, who's in opposition to broken windows policing and broken window and stop, question, and frisk and things of that nature. He's welcome to come back on here. He had a good time. We laugh. There's and I think we need to get back there. I think that's where we really need to go as a nation. And so we're trying to shift that narrative and make it happen. And I think it's happening.
Again, I say it all the time, but I have to keep saying it. Opposition meets opportunity. Do not be timid or afraid or be angered by someone that's in opposition of your opinions. That's exactly what it is. It's your opinion, it's your perspective, it's your life, and people are entitled to it. And even if it's a complete opposition, and even if they feel that you're wrong, that's okay. Don't try to win an argument. I think that's the problem. People have this ideology that they have to win an argument. And that's why they're telling you, oh, you should be screaming at him. It's almost like you have to get over. But you know what that is? That is ego. If people emotionally detach themselves and remove themselves from ego, they'll get so much further in life. Just emotionally detach yourself. Don't put the emotion into these opinions. Just put perspective in it. Ask yourself, how did someone derive these opinions? What's the grassroots of their opinions? What's their perspective? Where did they grow up? How did they view the world? That's why I think it's so important that we speak to when we have these communication with people that don't agree, that have different viewpoints. And that's why I think having Cop Watch here was really the path to this opposition meets opportunity, is understanding where he got his perspective of. When you watch the episode, you learn a lot about it. And he's in opposition of what I think is a good cop, and that's okay. We can discuss that, and we can have civil conversations, just as John did with Justin Brandon. We have to keep this momentum going. Build together, work together, agree, disagree, but keep it civil. That's the American way.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think one of the things that always stick to me is that, like, you have to be humble and realize you don't know everything and you're going to be wrong about things. So when people sit there and tell me they don't agree with me on whatever, I'm just going to let you know, I don't agree with you on this. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, I don't expect people. So who's right? Am I right? Are you right? Somewhere there's the truth, right? There's your opinion, there's my opinion, and in between there's the truth, and nobody is the bearer of it. What could be true for me might not be true for you. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with opposite opinions. I think when it comes to politics and it affects people's life and it affects their quality of life and their earning power, I do think it becomes a little bit more volatile, a little bit more hostile verbally, and it should never lead to physical violence, which would be seen in the horrible scenario of where we had a former president of the United States and a presidential candidate, currently the leading presidential candidate in this nation, an assassination attempt on him, right? And it should never lead to that point, not physically, not where we're looking to kill people, not where we hate to people, but we should use the things that anger of us to make us speak our minds, to hold our elected officials' feet to the fire and hold them accountable and let them know exactly how we feel. Because again, just like I would tell young supervisors that were mad at something that one of their officers did, I would say, well, did you tell him? Oh, you didn't tell him? So how does he know? You didn't tell her? How does she know she messed up? How does she know? Something that might have happened out in the field needs to be addressed, right? It angers you because it's wrong, because it's dangerous, because it's stupid, because of whatever the reason is. That is a teaching learning moment. That is a learning moment for everyone. Now, you might instruct her on what she did or he did, and they might say in their head, I don't agree with it, or even to you, you don't agree with it. But at least we're having that conversation. We're getting it out there, and maybe whatever they did is kind of justifiable, and you learn why they did it, but you learn and you grow as a team, whether you're on the same team or not. So I think that's what conversations need to have. Real quick, before we get off, just want to brush on this article. We'll probably do a podcast on this in itself as a whole. But New York City Council seeking to shut down the NYPD gang database. at this time where we have a lot of criminal gangs who have illegally immigrated into the United States. And we're seeing, especially in New York City, a rise in gangs that were never here prior, whether they be from Venezuela or any other part of the world. Eric, what do you think about shutting down the gang database?
Sorry, I don't know why this thing keeps muted, but it's absolutely ridiculous. It's a complete opposition of public safety. The New York City Council is supposed to serve the public for their best means for public safety, for prosperity in the city. That's what New York City Mayor Eric Adams talks about. Also, this is a great opportunity to actually get people documented that are military age males, because at this point, we're in a sanctuary city. We do not communicate the so-called gaslighting from the police department that we communicate with our federal partners, which is absolutely not true, because it's a sanctuary city. But at least it would be an opportunity to document potential military age males that are part of a gang, and also gang problems that we have in New York City. It's always an issue that we have a problem with gangs and crews that facilitate crimes. We have to know these issues, and that's why we even document within the police department on the complaint report itself. When we have a crime that happens, there's always a question, right? Well, there was a question, and that was, is it gang motivated or gang related? Because that's important to know. If something happens, if someone commits a robbery, it's important to know, was it gang motivated? Was it motivated for the purposes to benefit a gang, or was it just gang related, right? Because when you know where to investigate, these are investigative tools and resources that the city council is removing from the police department, that handicaps them and handicaps public safety. This is absolutely irresponsible. More virtual signaling and pandering to the public. This is ridiculous. Yes, is a gang legal? Yes, but I could be a gang of people that play chess or play basketball. But when we talk about gangs that facilitate crime, that's what this resource is used for. And if it's used improperly, it should be done on a case-by-case basis. But the overwhelming majority, this is an important tool, and it's a tool that if we're missing this, it hurts public safety, it hurts the public.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want individual freedom. I want individual liberty. I don't think people should be investigated without evidence. But that's not what's happening here. You have people who are known gang members, who are involved in gang activity, who are arrested, who are being put in a database for intelligence gathering purposes. They don't lose any of their constitutional rights by being in a gang database for criminal activity, for the NYPD, but being able to pull up into a moment's notice who they're with, who they're around, especially at this time, again, when we have unknown individuals who enter our borders, for the NYPD to understand when criminal actions happen, or we get video of criminal actions, who these people are associated with, in order to identify, who else was at the scene of a crime, and to possibly quell further gang violence amongst rival crews. So I think it's absolutely ridiculous at this point. City council saying that, it harms black and brown people, the same old nonsense. I don't see it. I think it's a good conversation for maybe even to bring Mighty Fuzz Young on to speak about the gang database and his thoughts on it, as far as from a constitutional standpoint and individual liberty standpoint. But for me, this is an intelligence tool. Again, more than likely, myself and Eric are on some domestic terrorism watch list for giving our opinions, which is absolutely ridiculous. But if it's an intelligence gathering mission, I can't say that I really give two shits. But we've done nothing wrong and we've committed no crime, unlike the people on this gang database, right? Unlike people who are involved in gang criminal activities, unlike me and Eric. So,
John, what gang are we in?
I have no idea. I don't know. We're in the NYPD flunky gang, right? We didn't bend over to the man, so we have to. We weren't good little soldiers with our mouth shut. So that's the gang. But yeah, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I think we should actually get into this, do a whole podcast on this, because it just shows the continuation of the progressive movement, the anti-police legislation, and really forget the anti-police part. This is pro-criminal. This is done to shield criminal gang activity. Our elected officials are doing it. Again, Justin Brennan's in favor of this. I hope to God that he's smart enough and the rest of the New York City Council is smart enough to get homeless people that they made homeless because of the mayor's executive order that Bill de Blasio put into place and Eric Adams enforced, one that they could have pulled down at any second and they did not do. Let's get those people out of sleeping out of their cars, back to work. They did absolutely nothing wrong. Let's put them back in life. I don't understand why we're going to continue to further that. But if Justin Brennan votes on that, I'll give him kudos. But he shouldn't be voting on this either. And if he does, I'll be coming after him for that too online. I'll be giving my opinion online and doing podcasts about it and saying why people shouldn't elect people like him.
You know, it's interesting, right, John? You know, we're going to do a whole podcast about this. And I remember, you know, we said, we'll talk about this briefly. And he said, maybe we should do a podcast on it. But as we're talking about it, I'm thinking, you know, there's a lot of information really to peel back here. We can even compare this to the vaccine mandate. It's interesting, right, that the police department and the New York City Council and the politicians have no issue having a vaccine database for police officers, but they have an issue having a database for gang members that could help public safety. They're afraid that they're going to violate criminals' rights, but not the police officers. Again, just more hypocrisy. It's really daunting to think about these things. How it ferments in your mind. It's just the hypocrisy and the way police officers are treated in comparison to potential criminals. Again, you know, the U.S. Constitution is so important, but if this could be an investigative tool to protect people, again, I don't care if I'm on some radar. If they say, oh, you know what, it's important to know Eric Dim's tattoos and John McCarry's tattoos, that's fine with me. As long as you're not violating my rights, you know, and harass me and trying to cause any intimidation in any way, that's fine. If you want to use it for resource investigative tools, that doesn't bother me. I agree with you. But the same thing goes for this. These are fantastic tools. You know, anytime that would have robberies or shooting incidents, when we had the gang database, we would use that to determine who associates are. And that leads to potential arrests, which could curb a crime or stop a crime happening before it happens. But again, New York City Council handicapping the New York City Police Department, which handicaps the public. And we see it time and time again. The How Many Stops Act, the protest settlement, the diaphragm law, the bail reform. It's one piece of legislation after another.
Absolutely, my friend. So listen, guys, thanks for tuning in. This is one of our regular episodes. We're going to go live again. Please, if you want to interact with us on the live, please go over to YouTube. We appreciate all the support, all the donations. Shout out to Ron Layson for donating, I believe, almost $60 to us in the last live that we did. Very generous, you know, and anything you guys could do to help, we appreciate it. Again, self-funded podcast. We're going to put all the money back into building this brand and building the podcast out. And we will be moving towards a subscription-based service. Not totally. We still will be giving free episodes, but there will be some subscription-only episodes, and we'll be working on that next month, and we'll put that out. So we appreciate everybody for tuning in. And Eric, got anything before you go?
No, thank you so much to supporters out there. If you like what you watch, you know, tell your friends about it. Tell other people about it. Have them like and subscribe. And of course, you know, thank you, Ron Layson. Thank you, Arbed. Thank you, anyone that's provided donations to this podcast. Exactly what John said. It's a self-funded podcast. We spend a lot of time. We do a lot of research for this podcast to get this information out to you. So if you want to leave a donation, support the podcast, please do on YouTube. Thank you so much. We appreciate New York's Finest Unfiltered Podcast, your 265 Police Live series. At you every time, bringing NYPD content, bringing political content, any content that's relative right now. Let's work together. Communication breaks barriers. We're building together. Opposition meets opportunity. To our friends out there, thank you so much. And the haters, we got love for you too.
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, You can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.